what we saw from Iran this week, and that the tensions seem to have settled, at least with the U.S., there is some indication that they're not going to take that step to really disrupt the oil market right now. However, like you said, it's the Middle East. Tensions could change any hour of any day.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle, and I'm joined today by energy and environment reporter Callie Patteson. Callie, Senator Mike Lee, the Republican from Utah, has been in the news a lot. He's been waging a little bit of a war, you might say, over public lands.
Yeah.
What's got him so exercised?
Yeah, so this has been something he's been passionate about for a bit, and we saw some similar push on the House side. And we've got some Republicans who they want to sell some public lands for housing development.
Right.
So he's been trying to get it into the Republicans' mega tax bill that they've been discussing in the House and the Senate the last several weeks, and we might see some movement on in the coming days. Originally, he was proposing selling around 0.5 to 0.75% of lands managed by the Bureau of Land Management and Forest Service. Now, this estimates to around 3 million acres of federal land. They said, this is going to not impact some federally protected lands like national parks, but critics quickly pointed out that it's putting other areas at risk. We're looking at wilderness areas and roadless areas like forests or even critical habitats. And he was receiving criticism on both sides, from Democrats and environmentalists to also conservatives who are passionate about hunting and having this land for their kids and their grandchildren, and just for recreation use. And he was facing a lot of pushback the last couple of weeks. So he's since come back and pulled it back a little bit. Now he's saying Forest Service land won't be touched, but BLM land is still at risk. It's around up to 0.5%. And so we're looking at around 1 million acres of BLM land that could be sold. He has said, this can only be used for housing and development, and it has to be within 5 miles of a population center. He wants to make more housing affordable. That's what he wants to do. But a lot of critics are saying it's putting our federal and our public lands at risk in the process.
Always a lot of tension there. So 3 Mile Island, making a comeback.
Absolutely. So we saw last fall that Constellation Energy, which is now the owner of the Unit 1 at 3 Mile Island, is joining together with Microsoft. They're going to bring it back online. When they announced that back in the fall, they said they were aiming for 2028 to bring it online and see around 800 megawatts of new nuclear energy. Now, just this week, they're ramping up that timeline. They've been able to speed up this employee process. They've hired around 400 out of the 600 permanent employees that they're going to see. They have already started training people to be licensed operators to run this plant. And they've received an early approval from the grid operator, PJM Interconnection, to interconnect it to the grid earlier than expected. So with all of that, now they're thinking we can get this online by 2027. If they're able to do this, if they're able to get approvals from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, it's going to make it the second decommissioned plant to come back online. The first one, of course, being Palisades in Michigan later this year. So it's really exciting. A lot of folks are excited about it in Pennsylvania, especially in the area. You're seeing a lot of folks that used to work at the plant are coming back. We talked with a lot of folks this week who their parents worked there, their grandparents, and so now you're seeing a lot of more young faces at this facility. The Unit 2, which was the site of the worst nuclear accident in U.S. history back in 1979, it is still decommissioned. It's in the process of being decommissioned. It's about a 15-year process. That's not being touched. So when they're talking about 3 Mile Island coming online, it's just Unit 1, and that has actually been since renamed as the Crane Clean Energy Center.
And so, because of what you mentioned, though, the older plant that's not going to be brought back online, at least not at this time, that's why this has a certain level of notoriety before all of those young faces were around.
Oh, absolutely. You hear 3 Mile Island and you think of the worst nuclear accident in U.S. history. And you don't necessarily think of it as a place to bring nuclear back. But, this was a town that had relied on the plant for years, and Unit 1 was actually operational until 2019. So it's been important to this town, to Londonderry Township, to Middletown, to all the surrounding areas, even Hershey, Pennsylvania, which is only 20 minutes away, for hundreds and hundreds of jobs. And so they're hoping to see a lot more revenue come in from taxation on the plant, but then also more income for the residents And we could also see more development. You know, it's Microsoft. They want to use this power to power AI, to power these data centers. So there's starting to have some talks as well on what's Microsoft going to do. Are we going to see development from them in the region? Or are they going to just take the power and use it elsewhere? That's a little unclear at the moment, but it's a place to watch over the next 5 years.
So it looks like our hostilities with Iran are over, but it's the Middle East, so you'd never really know. There were some consequences for energy if this had become a more protracted military operation. What are some of the things people were looking at? What have we maybe potentially averted, and what could come into play if we were to resume hostilities again?
Yeah, absolutely. So Iran is one of the top 10 oil producers in the world, and where they're located right on the critical and narrow Strait of Hormuz. This is a very critical place for oil transport throughout the world. Most of oil is transported through this water route, and so there were talks that because of Iran's location, they might be able to completely shutter transportation through it, and that could skyrocket oil prices. You know, they would have to go on, all these vessels that are carrying this cargo and this crude oil would have to go on much longer routes, raising insurance prices, raising transportation prices, and you'd be looking at oil prices at around triple digits, around $130 per barrel. Where we're at now, it's around only 60 or 65. So we'd be seeing massive increases there. At the same time, a lot of U.S. officials were saying that would have been suicidal for Iran. They also rely on this waterway for their own transportation.
Right.
And much of their oil goes to China. And so they would potentially be alienating themselves from their biggest importer of their own product. So there was while there was speculation about it, there's a lot of agreement that they're likely not going to go for that full shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz. What they can do, however, is put a little bit of pressure on the vessels that are still traveling through it. We could see this in, harassing vessels or hijacking or increasing prices for those traveling through. You could see interference of GPS systems. You could see other pressure on operations for these ships. That would allow them to still be able to get their own product through and still not hurt their relationship with their customers like China, and then hurt Western producers that are still looking to travel through. But at the same time, folks are saying they're going to see a lot of retaliation and other alienation from the market if they take those steps. So what we saw from Iran this week, and that the tensions seem to have settled, at least with the U.S., there is some indication that they're not going to take that step to really disrupt the oil market right now. However, like you said, it's the Middle East. Tensions could change any hour of any day. So it's something that a lot of analysts and traders are still monitoring. We're going to see how it plays out, but at least for now, as we look at the prices, oil has settled for the moment.
Definitely a situation to keep monitoring.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Callie.
Of course.
You can read Callie and subscribe to our daily On Energy newsletter at washingtonexaminer.com.